welcome once again to Calaveras Living. You know, there are a lot of really nice people in this world. There are some people who aren't so nice, and we all have to have jobs unless you're independently wealthy. But I think of the number of people who are really the heroes of our country who do things that benefit other people. And of course, you talk about freedom, you think of people in the armed forces, you think of safety, and you think of police officers, firefighters, or you think of people who work in emergency rooms at hospitals. And of course, our health is very important. And with us today, a couple of people who fit right in that same category. They help others. Each of them is a paramedic, and on your left, when you're looking at the camera, is Desiree Jimenez, right? Who is a paramedic. And next to her is Scott Vasquez. They work out of different areas. He works out of its Pass Fire Department, and you work out of the ambulance company, huh? Mm-hmm. That's the American Legion. Correct. Do they still have that pass that they sell each year?
They do.
I will tell you about that a little later. That's the deal. I mean, just for $100, you have, well, they won't take you anywhere you want to go, but you know, they're there in an emergency, and it saves a lot of expense and time. But anyway, it's good to see you both.
Thanks for having us.
Actually, Desiree, how did you get the idea, get the motivation to become a paramedic?
I started right out of high school. I was working as a lifeguard in high school and met a friend that was an EMT. I did one ride along with him on the ambulance, and I was sold. I came home and told my parents, I know what I want to do with my life, and they thought it was a phase, but I immediately went into EMT school, worked as an EMT, and then got right into paramedic school, and the rest is history. I mean, that was 12, 13 years ago.
Well, very few people coming out of high school know what they want to do
I know.
at all.
My parents thought I was crazy, but...
Well, but they've come around.
They have.
Okay, good. And Scott, how about you? How'd you get motivated? You're also a fireman, right?
Yes, I am. So, yeah, I got motivated, oh my gosh, it's been quite a few years, probably 1997, I believe it was, when I got the idea. I wanted to get involved in public service and fire and EMS, and I started volunteering in Amador County, and I started working for the Forest Service, and kind of got hooked on the whole fire aspect. Worked for CDF for a while, and decided, you know, certain calls kind of change your perspective on things. Yeah. And I had some calls that kind of hit close to home for me, and so I wanted to do more. So that kind of motivated me to go to paramedic school, and that was 2003. I started paramedic school, and I've been working as a paramedic ever since.
What satisfaction do you get out of the job? I mean, you get paid well, and there's some a challenge, but what really satisfies you in your work?
There's definitely a challenge. Every call is different to us. Every call brings a different experience, different challenges for us. But what I get out of it mostly is seeing the difference. A lot of our calls are, I shouldn't say they're basic, but they're fairly routine. It's the ones that you can actually make a difference on, instead of just giving somebody a ride to the hospital, like doing an intervention that actually saves somebody's life, and seeing that person in town 5 months later, and they recognize you and talk to them. To me, that's the biggest.
Yeah. Is that kind of the way you feel too?
Yes, and I also love just the day-to-day interactions with people. I've met so many amazing people that I never would have met. Yeah. You know, we cross paths with so many people that we wouldn't have met if we were in a different line of work.
What's kind of a typical day? How many calls might you get? I know there are no typical days, but, you know, say an average day, how many calls would you get?
Oh, it varies big time. Maybe 4 to 6.
Okay.
I mean, 6 is kind of busy for us because
more in the daytime or more at night?
More in the daytime.
More in the daytime.
We have such long turnaround times since the hospitals are so far. So the calls take a long time. Like in the city, 6 calls would sound like nothing, but out here 6 calls is a lot.
Okay. But you work, each of you works in your respective areas, 48 hours on and then 4 days off?
Yes.
But you're available those 48 hours at short notice?
Yes.
At the drop of a dime.
Okay. Now, how much training did you have to take to be a paramedic?
Well, we have to do EMT first, which is usually a college semester.
So that's the way it goes, EMT? Okay.
And then they recommend that you get some experience as an EMT before you apply for paramedic school. And then paramedic school is about a year and a half.
Oh, a steady week in and week out?
It's about 6 to 7 months of schoolwork, and then you have to do 2 different internships. An internship at the hospital and then an internship in the field.
Okay.
So lots of hours.
Yeah, where did you take your training?
In Dublin, in the Bay Area.
In Dublin.
And they actually sent me out here on my internship, and I had never heard of this area before in my life.
A lot of people haven't.
I know. I'm born and raised in the Bay Area, and
Yeah.
I remember they told me they were going to send me to Amador County. I said, where?
Yeah.
Where is that?
Yeah.
And I ended up loving it out here.
You're an illegal alien here.
I am. I'm a flatlander.
Okay. Yeah. Where'd you get your training?
I did mine in Stockton. I
Stockton?
believe it was the same company that she used, but just a different area.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I did mine in Stockton, and I did my internship up in Amador County as well. I went to Amador County.
It's the same number of hours. I mean, it's
Yes.
a state license you get, or what?
It is a state. Well, actually, it's a national registry,
Uh-huh.
but you also need a state card. So now all we have to do is maintain a state card.
Okay.
Now,
You have to take refresher tests.
absolutely.
How often?
2 years.
Every 2 years, it's 48 hours of continuation education credits that we have to take.
Wow.
So
Now, you're telling me on the phone, to you folks out there, many times you get a chance to talk with the guests before they come on so that I can learn something and not ask a stupid question. But what are some of the medical procedures that you can do that people might not know of? I mean, you're pretty advanced in what you can do, right?
As a paramedic, we can start IVs, we can give medications, we can intubate someone, which is basically sticking a tube down their throat and breathing for them. We can decompress a lung if someone has a collapsed lung, on top of all the basic, bandaging, splinting.
Okay. Are most of the calls, here again, I know it's the general answer, but are most of the calls either a heart attack, a stroke, fainting? What's a typical call?
I think majority of our calls, at least for me, I can't speak for Desiree, but I think most of ours are like a chest pain or shortness of breath call.
Okay.
It's
Or
usually-
fall.
Or fall. A lot of falls too. Probably those three probably make up about 80% of our overall medical calls.
Then how many of the people you help actually are taken by ambulance to a hospital somewhere?
99.9%, I would say.
Oh, quite a few.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, quite a few.
So, because I know a couple times I've had it happen at a doctor's office one time, and I didn't want to go to the hospital. I guess people don't want to.
Absolutely. It happens quite a bit, and a lot of times we'll spend a few minutes on probably, I don't know what the percentage is, but a pretty high percentage of just convincing people to go.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody wants to go to the hospital and mess up their daily routine in life, but,
Yeah.
my kind of motto is on it that if somebody's scared enough to call 911, I always recommend that they just go get checked out.
So is that what you both recommended? If somebody's in doubt, should I call 911 or shouldn't I? They should, huh?
Definitely.
Absolutely.
You know your body the best, and if something's wrong, then most people know it. A lot of people ignore it and wait till it's been going on for a while, but most people know.
Well, that's good. Now, when a crew goes out, how many usually go out? There's a paramedic who heads each crew, right? And how many people? 3 or 4, 2 or 3? How many usually go?
And 2 people in the ambulance most of the time, and then the fire department will come along with us,
Okay,
and that's usually 2, 3, 4 people.
okay. But sometimes there's more than one paramedic, right? Okay.
Yeah, we have a lot of EMTs that are bumping up, and they've gone to paramedic school, and now we have a lot of paramedics, so it's pretty common to see two paramedics together.
Are most of the firefighters paramedics?
We're about half and half.
Half and half.
Half and half. And Ebbets Pass is a little bit different just because we have a paramedic on the engine and a paramedic on the ambulance.
Okay.
And one of our battalion chiefs is also a paramedic. So on my shift, going to a call up in, say, in Arnold, you'll have at least 3 paramedics on scene, which makes it nice.
And sometimes, unless you still have maybe an EMT or 2 with you also?
Yes, so if whoever's on the ambulance that day it'll most likely be paramedic and 1 EMT, and then there'll be at least 1 EMT on the engine as well. And we have interns as well who are all EMTs, so there could be 3 EMTs and 3 paramedics on a call at any given time.
Well, it's probably better. The more you have, the better, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Now, run me through kind of what might be typical. If somebody, say, from San Andreas or somebody from up at Arnold calls 911, to whom does that call go?
That call goes to Calaveras Sheriff's Department initially, if it's a medical call, and then they will dispatch Cal Fire here in San Andreas. It goes through their dispatch as well, and then all the fire departments get dispatched through Cal Fire.
Do either one of you, as a paramedic, get firsthand talk with the dispatcher? Oh, it doesn't go through a lot of people, but you can actually talk with the person who got that call.
Yeah,
Yes.
we can call them up.
Okay. And we were talking also before about, I know I'd worked in an enhanced 911 system, and if you're calling, you were telling me before the show that if people are calling from their home phone, that pops up on the dispatcher screen and you have the exact location, right?
Yes, they get the name, the phone number, and the address, and they still verify to make sure that they're going to be sending the resources to the right address.
Okay, but if it's a cell phone, what?
It does not pop up with the location.
Okay, so you have to rely on the person's description to the dispatcher.
Yes.
Can't that get to be a little
Oh, yeah.
a little problematic sometimes?
Especially out here in some of the rural areas.
Yeah.
You'll get directions like, turn at the second tree or turn at the big rock.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of those out there. So
Boy, that cuts down on your response time.
it can, yeah.
So, but if somebody calls, say, I know there are paramedics in Copperopolis, San Andreas, Valley Springs, I guess, Arnold, all the other places, but the call goes to the place that's closest to where the person describes the emergency is happening?
Yes. And the dispatch, they know where we're at all times.
Okay.
And they can see where we're at. That we have trackers on our ambulances. But most of the time, I think that they just go by us telling them. We'll let them know if we're in San Andreas or if we're returning to Angels Camp, so they know exactly where we're at, so they don't have to rely on looking at the screen and figuring out who's closest to it.
So there are enough paramedics and EMTs to cover the whole area, even at the very busy times?
Yes.
Or do you sometimes just get short of people?
There's times it'll get thin. It'll get a little thin, but there's always somebody to come.
Mm-hmm.
There's always somebody to come.
And in that case, they'll move ambulances around. Like if the rest of the county is out of ambulances, sometimes we'll pull Ebbets Pass unit and they'll come down to cover. We'll pull a unit from Amador County or Tuolumne County if it's that busy.
Oh, that's good.
And we utilize them as well. If it gets busy in Arnold, sometimes our calls come in twos for whatever reason, I don't know, and then we'll have like Medic 24 out of Angels Camp and they'll come up and cover for us too. So it's mutual, we help each other.
A few months ago, I went to Bear Valley like 3 times in a week, and
Is
that's
there-
up in the Ebbets Passes area.
Yeah, that's the way I used to drive.
Try it in a snowstorm.
It's beautiful.
Now, you both have a lot of experience. Anything pop up in your mind of an interesting call? You got called out and when you got there it was a lot different than described? Or things went particularly well? Of course, if you're saving a life, that's going well.
I know. Let me think about that.
How about you, Scott? Anything come to you?
Oh, wow, off the top of my head. A lot of our calls we get dispatched to one thing, and the dispatchers can only go by what the person gives them as far as what's the complaint. There's a lot of times we'll get on scene, it'll be something completely different. I shouldn't say completely, but you get called out for a chest pain and they have a broken leg. I mean, that's happened before. Or they're short of breath. Well, they're short of breath because they're in pain from their leg. So just stuff like that, it's...
So no two are the same, really, basically, huh?
No two
Even
are
though it
never
might be
the
the same type of injury.
Never the same. You're dealing with different personalities. You're dealing with different types of calls.
Different family members and dynamics on scene, and we always have to worry about everything that's going on because we never know what we're going to walk into. We could get a call for chest pain, and it could be chest pain because they were stabbed in the chest, and we don't get that information.
Yeah. That's a good point.
So we really
have to give me a pain in the chest.
So we really have to be cautious all the time, and be aware of what's going on, and watch. When we're walking up to a house, and always just be aware of our surroundings and the people, and you just never know what can happen.
Are family members usually a help or a hindrance?
Both.
Both. Okay. I mean, they can be scared or worried or interfere too much.
Yeah, a lot of family members, they're scared and they want to answer the questions for the patient. They're scared and we're trying to ask the patient, what's your name, what's going on? And we want to hear it from them. And the family members will answer it, getting mad at us, like, oh, my mom's not feeling well, don't stop asking her these questions. But we need to hear it from the patient. So that happens a lot.
And we'll ask them these questions to find out what their mental capacity is. That's why we're asking them a lot of these questions.
Yeah.
Questions that the family members may think is completely basic. And they are basic questions.
Yeah.
But it's just something that we have to do.
Your oxygen sources, you have portable things. The things, the cannulas that you use. Someone told me once you put them poking down rather than up. Is that true?
Correct.
Yes.
That is correct.
I'd never known that. I thought that you'd get more oxygen into your nasal passage by having them and said, no, it dries things out. But,
And it's uncomfortable the other way.
oh, is
I know.
it?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, both locations where you are, you have some training things. You use sometimes volunteers, or you're telling me you use some high school students. There are programs to help people, just like you, getting out of school, see if they're interested in this. Or
Yeah.
So what's the program like in Ebbets Pass?
Ebbets Pass. Well, we have a volunteer program at Ebbets Pass, and we also have an intern program and a cadet program.
Oh.
So the cadet program is for young men under the age of 18, and then the intern
Young
program,
men only?
or young women.
Oh, okay. No,
Yes.
I mean, that kind of puzzled me.
Yes.
Okay.
So
She does look very feminine.
and then usually from, I think it's 15 to 18, I believe.
Okay.
And then we have an intern program for people over 18 and above. And they do shift work just like us. It's a good way to build experience, to kind of learn how a firehouse works. They run calls. We expect the same thing out of our interns as our paid personnel on a firefighter level. So physical fitness, training, they do everything that we do. And it's really a great program, and it really teaches people and exposes people to what fire department life is like.
Is that kind of like the program where you are?
Similar. It's our main program is ROP program with the high school, and it's amazing. It's for high school seniors that are interested in going into the emergency medical services field, and the chosen few that get chosen by their class, and I believe our management at American Legion, they come and they basically spend a few hours with us Monday through Thursday, their whole school year.
Oh, wow.
And they get to run on calls. You know, if we go on calls, they get hands-on, they get to see everything we see, and usually by the end of the school year, they've learned a lot. And some of them decide that it's for them, and some of them continue down the EMT and paramedic route, and some of them don't.
Are they usually helpful, or can they be interfered to, or are they just quiet while you're working?
They usually start out pretty quiet and nervous because they're uncomfortable and they're in a different situation. But by, halfway through the school year, they're usually very helpful, and they understand what's going on and what we need, and they know how to put on the EKG and take blood pressures and be helpful, and they like it. So it's really nice seeing these young kids be excited about.
Well, those are good. Who
Getting
sets
into
up
it.
those? Are each like the fire department there is free to pattern the program the way they want, or the ambulance service is free to pattern, or is that some kind of requirement from the state?
It's our program, it's Ebbets Pass's program, our intern program, and cadet program. Like with the cadets, there's only so many things we can do because they are minors. We can't put them into a dangerous situation. Now, the interns is completely different. It's considered like a volunteer type status, even though they do shift work, and they get paid for it. But they get paid for it's just a supplemental to help them pay for their fuel and uniforms and things like that. I mean, you're not going to actually have a career from being an intern. But the train is really good, and it steers them in the right direction.
Okay, it's mostly younger people in these positions?
Yes.
And of course, the high school students. Well, that's good. Do you have, what percentage, maybe 20, 30% would like to go into the same kind of work, or just 1 out of 10 or something like that?
That's a good question. What do you think?
I mean, it's just an estimate.
Yeah.
Probably, like for us, I know it's probably 80% pursue it still.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 80%.
Yeah.
Out of our last few years of ROP students, only I think maybe 2 of them have gone on to
Okay.
continue to EMT, and one of them is getting ready to start paramedic school, and a lot of them we keep in contact with. And
That's good. What are the requirements to start paramedic school as far as education or physical requirements? What are they?
Well, when we took it, it was you had to have your CPR, just basic CPR. You had to have your EMT, and I had to have it when I started. You have to be an EMT paid experience for at least a year before you could even apply for medic school.
Okay.
Other than that, there's no other requirements.
No educational requirement?
Not previously, no. No,
is
it
it?
helps.
Okay.
Definitely helps.
I would think.
they suggest taking an anatomy and physiology class if you can, because our anatomy and physiology can be kind of a crash course if people aren't familiar with it. But other than that, same thing with me. I had to have a year of experience, and paramedic schools don't require that anymore. Some young people can go straight from EMT to paramedic school, and I couldn't have done that. I mean, the hands-on was everything to me. I learned everything just being out in the field.
Good. Have you ever gotten to a situation where it was described a certain way, but when you got there, you really couldn't figure out what was wrong with the person?
Oh, absolutely.
What do you,
Absolutely.
where do you start delving into first?
Well, a lot of those calls that you can't really figure out what's going on. It's usually when somebody's severely altered and unresponsive. You start with just the basic stuff. You check, blood sugars. You put them on the monitor. You check their blood pressure to see if maybe their blood pressure is too low. They're hypotensive, and they, their body can't sustain. They're not compromising, or their heart rate's too fast and their body's not keeping up. They're not getting the oxygen they need, or their blood sugars are really low. I mean, you go down this checklist, of things to check, and then after a while, you run out of things to check, and then it's just like, well, it's, blood work and hospital is going to be the next best thing.
Okay, that's the type thing you try to urge to go to the hospital then, right?
Well, if they're unresponsive like that, then
Yeah.
they're pretty much going.
And a lot of times we have to play detective on scene. If the
Pardon?
patient, we have to play detective at their house
Oh, yeah.
sometimes. If someone isn't talking to us and they're by themselves, we have to look around to see if there's, pill bottles or if there's anything in the scene that could cause them to be this way. Because the hospital, we bring them to the hospital and, they go down their checklist as well.
Yeah.
But, we're the vital person that was there on scene. We have that information that they don't have.
Yeah. Are any of the problems that you get called out on drug-related or alcohol-related?
Sometimes. Yeah, sometimes.
I mean, someone just took the wrong drug or took too much of it or
Yes.
And
drank too much.
And a lot of time, if that person lives by themselves and there's nobody around, we'll even go as far as look at subscription dates on their pill bottles. We'll count pills to see if, oh no, they took too many of this one. This one
Yeah.
should have at least 20 and there's 2 in it. So just kind of like Desiree said, going down that checklist and
You are a house detective.
playing detective. Sometimes you got to do it.
Gee, but that is a challenge every time you go out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we never know what we're going to go to.
And you both like that challenge.
Yes.
I love it. Yep, I love it.
You're different type people.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people say that no, they can't do what we do, but I mean, in reality, it's not really how people think it is. It's not as, a lot of people think it's really gory, and I'm sure we see, we have a few bad calls a year that are really bad.
Yeah.
But overall, it's real satisfying, and you don't come across that real bad stuff very often.
How do you remain so calm?
Yeah.
I'm superstitious.
Yeah. How do you remain so calm during those situations?
Well,
Because that gives everybody confidence.
absolutely. And, it's like duck on a pond. You're calm up above where everybody can see, and you're going 100 miles an hour underneath the water. So, it's something I always told myself initially when I first got out of medic school was, trying to tell myself, nobody else is coming. You're it. You're the medic on scene. When I started, I was the only medic on scene as well, like with Desiree when I was working private ambulance. And there's no other medics on scene. So you're by yourself and you're trying to, figure out the problems and play detective. And so you just have to keep yourself calm, and because everybody else feeds off that.
Yeah.
So if you're calm, you can keep your crew calm.
You think that's just because that's the type personality you have, or a result of training and long-term work?
I think both.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Both of us are pretty mellow people, and I think that just kind of bleeds over into work, where we come to work and we're just mellow, day by day, minute by minute. We never know what can happen, but, we take everything as it comes.
So you never get upset.
Occasionally, we're human.
Yeah, but it's
occasionally.
more on personal things than business, right?
Well, every once in a while we'll have those bad calls that, we take home and
Yeah.
will bother us later, and it's inevitable. It happens.
Yeah.
But, we talk to people and try to go down the right avenue, so...
When you get to the hospital, do the people who come out, in an emergency situation like that, you run some things by them very quickly, what you've found, so it gives them kind of a base to work from?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So usually, like for us, Abbott's Pass, when we're coming down the hill, when I get to Angels Camp, say if I'm coming to Mark Twain Hospital, as soon as I hit Angels Camp, I'll get on the radio and I'll give Mark Twain a heads up. I'll give him a radio report, tell him what I have, what interventions I've done, and how my patient's doing, current vitals, and whatnot.
Okay.
Now it's different if you get like a helicopter, say somebody has to fly by helicopter. Well, you can't communicate with them. So once you get on scene to the LZ, they give a report. They come right in the back of the rig and give them a report. So they get no heads up whatsoever until they get on scene.
Now, we've covered quite a few things in a relatively short time, but is there something that the public should know out there that would help them in adapting to what you do or help you in adapting to them? Some things that we haven't covered. Does anything come to mind?
I think something is, no matter how bad somebody thinks it is, as far as calling 911 early, and that's a big factor because the sooner they can get to the hospital and then get their whatever issues that they're having, get them fixed, cuts down recovery time. It cuts down time in the hospital as well. You know, if somebody calls for chest pain, and how long have you had chest pain? Oh, I've had it a week, and it turns out they're having this big heart attack. Well, chest pain is created by your heart starving for oxygen. So as it's starving, its tissue's dying. So they could be in the hospital for a couple days, or because somebody waited too long, they could be in the hospital for a month, or may never recover.
Yeah, or especially
So-
on a stroke, too. I mean,
Absolutely.
time's of the essence.
Time
Yeah.
is.
Okay. Anything come to your mind, Desiree?
You know, if in doubt, call 911. I always tell people that they know their body the best, and if something is wrong, you know, usually people know it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people ignore it, but most of the time people know it, and like Scott said, you know, they may wait days to call 911 and, you know, call us at 4 o'clock in the morning and, you know, tell us this has been going on for a week. And we're like, why are you just calling us now? You know, we're here all the time, around the clock. You guys can call us anytime.
I guess a lot of people think, oh, it'll go away.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, unfortunately, they go away sometimes.
Yeah,
You know,
and-
which is if they wait too long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were you
And-
going to say?
And we hear it all the time. We'll be on scene of a call at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and oh, I tried to wait all night, you know, and
Yeah.
and it's like, don't wait. This is our
Yeah.
job. This is what we do. If we get up in the middle of the night, that's just the way it goes.
That's what we're here
you know?
for.
Exactly. So just don't be afraid to call if you think there's an issue.
Okay. Well, it's amazing to meet somebody who right out of high school knows what she wants to do. And you've been doing it how many years now?
I've been a paramedic for going on 9 years, and I've been on the ambulance for 12.
And you're a good driver.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I would say my EMT partners are better drivers,
Okay.
but I
That's
mean,
a challenge.
I think you ask any paramedic, and they're going to say an EMT is a better driver than a paramedic,
Oh, is that right?
just because they drive more often than we do.
Are most motorists courteous and really respond to a siren? Or some do the dumb things?
Yeah, it's hard. Some of them stop in front of us. I mean, a lot of people do pull off to the side, and we get happy. You know, we see that, and we're like, oh, thank you for pulling
Yes.
off to the side, and you know, not making us have to hit the horn at them. But some people pull
Yeah.
off to the wrong side or stop in front of us. So it's scary. You know, when we're driving
Yeah.
lights and sirens, we have not only our lives in our hands, but everyone around us.
Oh, yeah. You're essential. Well, thank you for coming. Desiree, good to see you.
Great to see you,
And
too.
Scott, good to
Thank
see you,
you.
too.
Nice to see you.
You both
Thanks.
look great.
Well, thank you.
You must be
you.
physically fit and eat right.
We try.
Here we try.
Okay. Hey, well, thanks for joining us on Calaveras Living, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.